Well, good morning and good afternoon and good evening. My name is Jeff Nepper, and I'd like to thank you so much for joining this Canary coaching session. I think it's always so neat to have an opportunity to share kind of behind the scenes or diving deeper secrets about Canary, and it's especially neat to do it to a global audience. So thank you for everybody, not just here in the States, but around the world that's joined us. I hope you're doing well. As I said, my name's Jeff. Please, if you don't have my email address, feel free to take it down and reach out to me. And I get to have the exciting job here at Canary of leading our business development, and have decided that it'd be fun to actually start sharing a little bit about ourselves when we do this. So for me, I'm an avid reader, and right now I'm reading a biography on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. If you are an avid reader like me, share it in the chat. Tell me what my next book should be. All right, before we get started, I wanted to share some helpful resources for you today. If you're not already aware of the Canary community, I would encourage you to please register today. Here you'll find training materials, forums, all of our upcoming events, product release information, and of course, our knowledge base. And particular to today's coaching session, if you look under the knowledge base under version 21, under data collectors, you will find a guide to the coaching session today. And once this session is in the books, we will post the recording on that guide as well. I did post a file pack to this page that's going to be especially helpful for you, so that on the back side of this training session today, you can take essentially the work that I'm going to be doing and deploy it in your own environment. And finally, if you're not aware, we do offer a learn as you go on your own demand academy, which you can also link to from our help center. All right, today it's my pleasure to talk to you about the data generation tool. Now, most Canary users have no idea that this tool even exists. It's really helpful for proof of concepts, for testing, and for just creating generated data in your own systems. It's something that was originally developed by our team to be used by our sales team so that we had demo environments. And we started making it publicly available a few versions ago. In fact, in our current installer, you'll see it right there at the bottom of the data collectors tab. One thing I also want to mention that will help you out with not just using the data generation tool, but with upcoming coaching sessions. Most people aren't aware because it's kind of hidden, but notice that over here, there is a third-party component tab. If you click on that third-party component tab, you're going to find that for the last few versions, we've been packaging a Mosquito MQTT broker along with all of our installs. It's not checked by default. You have to check that if you'd like it. And we essentially run our install and then immediately run the Mosquito MQTT server install. This can be super helpful because we establish the broker running as a service for you during that install, so that as you use tools like data generation, our MQTT collector, or the publisher, you don't have to worry about trying to stand up your own broker. And so data generation does not require an MQTT broker. It is an option to send to the MQTT broker. So if you need one, helpful little hint for you. So after you've installed it, where do you find the Canary data generator? We run it into our Canary folder under program files. Look in the collectors and then the data generator folder. And at the very top, if you sort by name, you'll find the Canary data generator executable. So what does this allow you to do? Well, you can create hundreds and thousands actually of simulation tags. I want to make sure I go ahead and warn you now, they do consume tag license. So if you're on a demo system or a POC and you're licensed for 2,000 tags and you decide to create 2,000 tags in the data generation tool, you've run out of license. So make sure that you keep that in mind. And if you want to do a really large scale test of Canary, just ask us for the appropriate licensing for that. So not only can you create these simulation tags and scale it to really high numbers, you can also customize both the data types and the patterns of data. So you can get some very nice simulation data out of this. It also supports backfilling. So not only can I create tags, but I can give myself instant history, which is extremely helpful for testing the system. I can choose to configure it as a Windows service, which we'll do today. And I can also take that data feed and target an MQTT server with it. Or I can target my Canary Historian's sender service. So I have that choice, and we'll show you all of that as we move into the demo. I should note that if you have any questions as we're going, I've got Sean here joining me, and Sean is standing by in both the chat, but our preference would be that you send your questions through the Q&A feature of the webinar. Thank you. All right, so to get started, let's launch the data generation tool. I've made a shortcut on my desktop, but again, just to show you the browse path, C drive program files, Canary, collectors, and data generator. Now that gets installed into this directory automatically for you. And when I run the application for the first time, I have tags already created. Let's just go full screen. And I have a tag essentially for every data pattern that we support. If I click on any of the tags, I get a list of all of the properties that are available to me. So for instance, by default, we're targeting a data set named data generation and targeting a historian local to my machine. If I wanted to send this to a different historian, I would simply type in the IP address or the address of that historian. If I wanted to send it to multiple historians, I would type in the second server name, just like a traditional Canary logging session, comma separated for that. If I want to edit the dataset name, I can do so. If I want to change the tag name, I can do so. Notice that all of my tag names have a number applied to them. That's because the auto number feature is currently turned on. The nice thing about auto number is that if I duplicate tag names, it recognizes that and just adds an extra increment of the number to that tag name. Here's where I control the patterns. So a decay pattern will essentially drop in value over time. So decay allows me to choose my min and my max. It would start at 100 and move down to 0. It would do that over a cycle by default of 1 minute at 1 second increments. So I could change that cycle. For instance, if I wanted to change that cycle to 10 minutes, then my decay would happen in a finer resolution. Instead of decaying by entire integers, I would be decaying by tenths or hundredths of if I look at a discrete, my discrete data type is essentially a Boolean. And I don't have the ability to change my min or my max. My cycle rate I can change, and my log rate I can change. Offset allows me to essentially change when the Boolean triggers. So if it runs every minute, but if I wanted this one to delay by 5 seconds, that's what my offset does. Similar to the decay, I have growth, where I go from the minimum to the maximum. I have pulse, and the pulse will create a pattern that looks just like a pulse pattern. I can ramp up or down, and then you'll see a series of randoms, random 1 and 2. If I set my min and my max, the random 1 and random 2 will move at random over the full length of the range that I set with the min and the max. There is no offset, there is no cycle here. It's just based on log rate or my parameters. Jumping down the list to random middle, low, and high, again, produces a random number, but as the name suggests, the low will stay towards the lower end of my range. The high will stay towards the higher end of my range, and the middle will stay towards the middle of my range. They will occasionally move outside of those areas so that a low will occasionally reach towards the upper part of the range, as a high will reach towards the lower part of the range, but the mass amount of the data will live in those ranges accordingly. We offer all of these different randoms because we find it's super helpful if you're trying to generate some almost like real world data. This gives you a little more control over the patterns. Assign is just a sign pattern, simple enough. The squares. So these are great for simulating Booleans, where you'll have the minimum, in this case 0, it'll live in 10%, and then it'll be 90% at the highest at the max. So if I wanted to set this up more of a Boolean, I might do it like this. I could do -1 and set the max at 0, change the data type to an integer, and then adjust my cycle. Here I might choose to do that on a 30-minute cycle. And instead of pulling it every second, we'll pull it every 15. Step up and step down, we'll climb like a ramp up, doing a jump with a flat, jump with a flat, and then it'll come back down. So that's the step up is up, the step down comes back down from the top. The string allows me to actually log a string value. So here I pick my pattern is string, my data type stays string, and then canary birds are yellow as our default. You can obviously type in any string that you would like. It's a nice way to be able to see how strings appear, say, if you add that tag to a trend chart. The triangle goes up and comes back down, again on the cycle and the log rate that you set. And here's one that I like a lot to simulate totalizers. It's an accumulation tag. It is random in its growth, but it is always growing. So if I set it, for instance, from, if I wanted to treat it like a, maybe like a totalizer that's monitoring production, I might set it with a really high max value and set the range to be quite long. If I do 7 dot, that now moves me out of hours into days. And so over 7 days, with a frequency of updating every 30 seconds, this tag will climb from a starting value of 0. And at the end of 7 days, it will reach 100,000. And it will randomly grow at different time intervals and at different growth steps until it reaches that. So if I was setting it up as like a production totalizer where I'm producing widgets, I probably wouldn't want it as a double or a float. I'd want it as an integer. And then the opposite would be my deaccum, where it's doing the exact opposite. It's dropping. Data type change allows me to essentially create a tag that is constantly changing its data types, again, for testing. Okay, so if I've built something that I'm happy with, I have the ability to save that, and I save it as a data generation file or a DGF file. I don't need to save this, but I do want to show you how the logging piece works. I could go ahead and just start logging right now, and that would essentially start sending data to my local host historian to a data generation data set. I'm going to change the name of this to Data Gen Demo. I'm going to do that for all my tags. Make sure you select them all if you're going to change them all. And then I want to show you how this auto number works. So I'm going to take the tags that I have selected, and I'm going to copy them. And now the second iteration of these are all ending in 02. Let's copy some more. And the beautiful thing about this feature is I can copy and copy and copy and copy and copy. So very quickly, I can create large tag lists. There's 396 tags. Let's just grab all of them and we'll copy it again. I will tell you that at some point, I think in my use case, if I have more than I think 500 or maybe 1,000 typically selected, and I do a copy, it can sometimes crash this application. Keep in mind, this application is not meant for a production environment. This application is really just a test tool. So you will notice from time to time a few little buggy things about it. But I think it's worth the price of free. So keep that in mind. All right, so now I've got this huge tag list. If I wanted to, I could range this. So if I create a start time in my range, and I'm just going to go back and let's just say, I don't know, yesterday morning at midnight. If I leave the stop time empty, it's going to start logging data, get current, and then continue to log into the future. So let's do that. Down below, I can see the items being logged. Those represent TVQs, and I see that I have started logging. So I've already sent over 2.5 million updates to the historian. Let's take a look, see at it. And in my sender, I've got a whole bunch of data coming through. Every once in a while, I'll see it buffer as my historian is just clearing out all of the data I've thrown at it out of the receiver and pushing it into the historian. Inside of the historian, it auto-created that data gen demo set for me. It's showing me I have 1,100 tags currently writing and the number of updates. We use this tool a lot when we do really large scale testing of the historian. So we might create 40 different 25,000 tag sender sessions using our data gen tool, all pointing to a single historian so that we can get really high scale testing numbers. All right, so that is still catching up and running. One thing I will tell you is that when you do a backfill like this, you're not going to get individual HDB files for each day of the backfill. It's going to make one massive HDB file for today, even though you might have backfilled it for a year. So just be aware of that. After it gets to a certain size, it'll automatically roll over and create another daily file for today, another daily file for today. We likely will hit that limit on this backfill. All right, so let's talk about, I'm going to stop this one. Let's bring up one that I was working on earlier. So I've saved off a boiler demo. And in this boiler demo, I have created some tag names without using the auto number feature. And those tag names have dots in them, which is giving me structure. As you know, Canary uses the dot to create structure in the tag names. And I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I'm creating a bit of a nice clean tag naming that I can use for an asset model later on. So I've got a factory region or a position in my factory, east, west. I've got line numbers and then some tags. If I wanted to take a large section of this, maybe the north and the south, and duplicate it, I would essentially have duplication in my tag names, right? There's already a north line 1 pressure. But if I save this, we'll save it as boiler demo, and then open up that DGF file. Now I'm saving everything in program data. I highly recommend that inside of program data, Canary Labs, if you have not, if it does not show up for you, I don't remember if it automatically gets created as part of the install. Either way, make a data generation folder and save your DGFs there. There's also 2 other files that I've included in the download pack that is on the Help Center that will help you with creating the service and running this as an MQTT data feed. But if I open up that DGF file with Notepad, what I'll see is one line with all of the properties for each of those tags. So there's the tag number inside of the data gen tool. There's the data set. There's the tag name. And then here's the properties. So what I could essentially do is I could take all of those duplicates, highlight them, and instead of editing those tags one at a time inside of the data gen tool, I can take all those norths and make them northwest. Make sure you have the in selection only piece there. And I can take all of the souths and make them maybe southwest. So it's just a nice fast way to take a lot of tags and edit them without having to go through and select each tag and edit them one at a time inside that data generation tool. So now I just open that back up. And I no longer have the duplicates that I once had. I could have done the exact same thing. I could have come in here and edited each one at a time. But in my experience, once you start getting a large tag count, which is usually why I use this tool anyway, this is a much faster approach. Adding tags. If I just wanted to add a new tag, maybe there's a tag in here for, notice that the defaults come back when I do that. Maybe there was a boiler demo, and this is a production for, it's an entire production for Southwest. I just use that add tag feature. I can tell it how many tags I want to add. I come in, pick my numbers. This one we'll leave as a float, and we'll say it goes up to 10,000 resets every day. Perfect. I could duplicate that and make that tag again for south, northwest, east, north, and so on. All right, now notice here, I'm not targeting the historian anymore. It's a bit confusing because the historian didn't blank and the data set didn't blank, but here I'm targeting an MQTT server. So over on my historian, I've turned on my MQTT collector. I've created a configuration for data generation, and we are going to send by default to a local host broker port 18883, and I just subscribe to everything, sending it to MQTT data. Because I've done that already, and I've already enabled that, earlier I had picked up the first 22 tags that I was showing you. But now if I turn this logging on, I start logging tags, and over here, I discover those 77 tags, sorry, and start updating immediately with the values. If you have to configure to a different location for your broker, maybe you want to actually publish this to like a Hive MQ broker in the cloud, not a problem, you can do that. Come to program data, Canary Labs, data generation, and here is where you need to drop the file that we've included on the Help Center page. If that file is not there, you're not going to be able to send a MQTT data stream. Inside of this file is where I've named the location of my broker, telling it to use port 1883. Because I'm using 1883, I don't need a username or a password, and I leave SSL protocol to disabled or 0. If you needed to change this to secure 8883, put in your username, password, credentials, change this to 4. Save it, and you're good to go. Reminder questions into the Q&A. I'm going to address them here in just a second as we finish this up. But last thing to show you is there is also a file called data generation config. So if we edit that, what we're going to see is the ability to appear with a client name and target a DGF file. If memory serves correctly, I can actually target multiple DGF files. I believe I use a semicolon and a space, and then I'll put the path again. I typically am just using one DGF file as part of my service. So if I have a path, again, I would keep the DGF always local inside of the same data generation folder as the config file is. If I target a DGF here, Let me stop logging here. I can't run this as a service and also be running this in real time as an application. So you have to kind of pick one or the other. I would recommend running it as a service. That way it's running all the time for you. But that if I want to establish that service, I need to come over to the C drive, program files, Canary, collectors, data generator, and the service is SAF data generation service. Let's go ahead and get that path, and we'll just create the service and run it. All right. Open up command prompt, run it as an admin. And with a little bit of luck, I think everything's correct on that. Canary data generation service, name it what you want. So SC create is going to create a service. Next section here is the name of that service. Do yourself a favor, don't put spaces in there. If you put spaces in there, you need to put quotes around it. Bin path equals, and then quote my path to that SAF underscore data generation service exe. Success. Let's see about that. There it is. And with a little luck, we'll get it right on the first time. And it's running. Let's double check it and take a look. In my sender, I can see that data generation is active, coming in the sender. And in the historian, I don't even remember the name of the data set I was sending this to. Let's see, not MQTT data. Oh, there they are. So I created, out of that one pumps and towers file, I'm sending to two different data sets. Some of my tags are named demo-ps, some are named demo-wt. I'm writing to two different data sets. And since you joined this call today, I thought I'd give you a little freebie. So what I've done is I created a new virtual view, bringing both those data sets together, and included in that virtual view some regex that reshape those tag names and allowed me to create multiple districts, towers, stations, and pump assets. And then I've taken that and exported that rule for you. So if you run this exact same service that I'm running and tie in your localhost demo-ps, localhost demo-wt, if you keep the data sets the same and just create a new virtual view, you can import my text file rules and you'll have an asset model ready to go. And that asset model has districts, stations, and within a pumping station, you have pumps and towers. Those pumps have a bunch of tags, and the towers have just a level and a temp. So let's see about how the easiest way for us to get you that. I don't believe in the webinar that I can pass you a file easily. So let's do it this way instead. Let's go to Help Center. Sean, have we had any questions coming in?
No, none so far, Jeff.
All right, this is going to be the 5-minute countdown, everybody. If you have a question, now's the time to get it in, or shoot me an email. There's the data generation tool. There we go. Inside of this zip file, I'm going to pass this to you in the chat. To everyone. There you go. Follow that URL in the chat. You can download that zip file, and here's what's inside of it. I don't have to extract it. Inside of it is the data gen folder. So you could take this entire folder and just drop it inside of your program data. It's got the boiler demo as well as the pumps and tanks. It has the data generation file already configured to target pumps and tanks. So after you create the service, it's going to run that DGF for you. And it also has the MQTT set up for your local host MQTT broker. Most importantly, if you want to use this demo, upload that water district's rules into your newly created virtual view with the two data sets that Pumps and Towers is creating, and you've got an asset model ready to go. All right, well, I hope today was super helpful for you. I absolutely love this data generation tool. I use it all the time. It makes my sales demos, I think, a bit more tied into the user that I'm trying to demo to. Instead of just showing random junk data, I can get kind of close to having some nice real world process data. And because I can feed it to an MQTT broker, for some of you, you have other software systems and applications that you use, Ignition, Flow software. Feel free to use this tool to feed an MQTT broker and let all of your test systems read data out of it. That's one of the reasons we made it. We wanted to make it really easy for anyone using Canary to be able to get this data generation tool. All right, I think that's going to wrap us up for the day. As always, if you have a question, feel free to send us an email, info@canarylabs.com. I hope everybody's having a great day, and thank you so much for attending.